Good evening, everybody. Daniel here from Son Casa Group, representing Share Casa Homes, all the way from Toronto. We are back today with our informative podcast. Here is my partner, Siwin Ye from California, wealth manager with a lot of high net worth clients. And today we have a special guest, my friend Emmanuel Primate, who is a senior host advisor for PadSplit.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel, for having me here, and excited to talk more about PadSplit and how it's creating opportunities for investors to be able to increase cash flow while also providing for a need in our communities.
I love it. Perfect. So, as our clients know, co-living is a very big thing for us. It is the main thing that we develop at the moment, and PadSplit happens to be the platform of choice for us for our homes. Like that's what we use for our rental system. And the reason that we wanted to have you here today is so that you could help us explain how it works for our clients, address some of their concerns, etc. So, without further ado, Emmanuel, in your own words, could you quickly explain how PadSplit works, the system in general, and just a little bit about its history?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So PadSplit is the nation's largest room rental marketplace in the United States. Throughout this presentation, whenever I say room rentals, co-living, or shared housing, those are all synonymous terms. They all mean the same thing. And it's just referring to this type of asset class that is rapidly growing. We started in 2018 out of Atlanta, Georgia. That was our first core market. Our founder, Atticus LeBlanc, has been investing in affordable housing for over 20 years now. And really built and grew this business model for hosts and investors to be able to make an impact in affordable housing through a technology-driven approach. Because renting by the room, it's not a new business model by any means. It's been going on for centuries. But the way PadSplit is introducing innovation and technology is what's really revolutionizing this industry, especially for those investing in real estate. So we now have over 75,000 residents who we have served over the last 8 years now. And we refer to our residents as members. We don't call them tenants. That's kind of tied to a legal strategy that we have that we'll talk about later on. And we have now over 32,000 units nationwide across 130 different cities in the United States. The units refer to the rooms in those properties. Renters who use PadSplit are typically renting on a medium to long-term rental basis. The average tenure of a PadSplit resident is typically 6 to 9 months, but it's not uncommon to see residents using PadSplit for years at a time because they're paying either weekly or bi-weekly. So as long as they can continue to pay, they can continue to stay in the place. In terms of how we make it simple to begin renting by the room, as a platform, think of us as almost like an operating system for your real estate investment strategy, right? We're really focused on this sort of rent by the room strategy. And our biggest value add as a marketplace for room rentals is marketing. We're generating over 1 million plus searches per month. And this is a nationwide, kind of search volume that we're generating. But we also have 60 plus room rental listing partners. So these room rental listing partners are, for example, like Furnished Finder, Zillow, Roomies, Zumper, Spare Room. They're just listing sites to generate more views and leads for your room rental property. And we have partnerships with them to automatically syndicate your PadSplit listing across their channels. We do handle the screenings as well and the legal agreements. So for the residents, if they're interested in joining PadSplit, there's a refundable $19 application fee. The actual process only takes them about 5 minutes to complete, and it's all done electronically. And then that we're verifying their identity. We're running a criminal background screening to make sure they haven't had a convicted felony in the last 7 years. An eviction report to make sure they haven't had more than one eviction in the last 7 years. If they have had one, you will be able to see the month and the year of that eviction, along with an income verification as well. So residents who are self-employed or employed will be approved approved for 50% of their weekly income. And then residents who are on Social Security or disability will be approved up to 66% of their weekly income. But you'll be able to see their full member profile along with they've been approved for income on their profile. And then we do provide resident support. It's kind of like a ticketing system that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that they can call into or email in. And then we have a rating system for residents to rate other residents, hosts to rate residents. And then we do also handle the payment collections. So our residents pay weekly or bi-weekly, and then the host receives a monthly payout within the first 10 days of every new month. So that's kind of a quick crash course on our history and some of the services that we provide, or all of our services, I should say.
So that's pretty awesome. I mean, I really like the part where you guys act not only as a huge marketing tool that nobody really can match, but the screening that you do for the potential members, it's again a lot of work done ahead of time that gives us peace of mind. Now, something that I find curious about the PadSplit system is how the rental system works. You mentioned that you guys rent on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Could you elaborate on that, why you did it, and why you think it works? What advantages are there for this system?
Well, I'd love to answer this with the question I'd pose back to you. And so typically most rent is due on the first of the month. Daniel, without looking at your calendar, do you know on what day June 1st falls on?
I do not.
And most renters don't, right? It's this sort of arbitrary date that we've been using historically. But the problem is that hourly wage working class employees are typically paid either weekly or bi-weekly. And so part of the reason why we're seeing, eviction rates rising and non-payment and collections issues in the traditional market is because of this misalignment in the way the workforce has been built versus how the real estate investing and collections is done. And so one of the main reasons why we have a 97+% collection rate is because the residents get to choose on what day and what frequency they get to pay. The host is still going to get their monthly payout, and what they typically would as with any traditional rental. The difference here is how the resident is built. And that one simple minor difference can make a huge drastic improvement in terms of collection rates and payment compliance.
Cool. That's really awesome. That's a very novel way of thought. I never thought of that. You are correct. We are used to paying on a monthly basis, but that does not match the way we get paid ourselves. So I can see how that greatly optimizes the collecting system. Now, let's talk really quick about the members, as you call them. Who's the typical PadSplit member? Why do they choose to stay in co-living versus other options? Our clients, they're really curious about who the market is because they don't know. That's basically it. So they want to know, so that gives them, again, peace of mind to safely invest into this system.
Yeah. Well, here's one eye-opening stat that not a lot of people are familiar with, but the average rent right now in the United States is right around $1,600 to $1,700 per month, right? And a lot of these traditional rentals require 3 times the income simply to even qualify. And so when we kind of break that down in an hourly wage, from an hourly wage standpoint, someone needs to show that they're making at least $25 an hour to even just simply qualify. But then there was a recent study that was released by the Economic Policy Institute back in July of last year that showed 67 million workers across the United States are paid less than $25 per hour. That's nearly 50% of our working class population cannot meet the minimum requirement just to qualify for a 1-bedroom apartment. And these are everyday people in our community, people who work in grocery stores, our teachers, people who work in post office or Amazon employees. Most Amazon employees are making less than $20 an hour. So it is the large, overwhelming majority of a working class population that, would kind of fit the category of being a good fit for PadSplit. And the reason why residents choose PadSplit as a housing option is because of the lower barriers to entry and the all-inclusive rental pricing, right? So most traditional rentals, in order to be able to move in, require first month's payment and also a security deposit as well.
Possibly
and
also the last month.
Stuff like that, and possibly last month. So if you're someone who has less than, let's say, $3,000 in savings, right, you're very likely not even going to be able to qualify just to get the keys, not even counting for utility deposit, furnishings, setting up the Wi-Fi, all those additional necessities to make it a livable space. Whereas with PadSplit, the minimum requirement in order to be able to rent a room is first week's worth of rent, and then any move-in fees, which is a one-time upfront cost, typically around $100, that is set by the host. So for less than $300, you're able to move into a place as early as the next day and then continue to stay there as long as you're paying, on a weekly or biweekly basis. So we're breaking down the barriers to entry for rental housing to everyday working class employees. And more importantly, it's an all-inclusive pricing that they're paying. We already talked about how the first of the month really is just an arbitrary month, but that's just the rent. Well, what about on what day the utilities are due? Well, what about on what day the Wi-Fi is due? And for someone who's maybe juggling 2 or 3 different jobs at a time, it's where issues begin to arise. So with PadSplit, that weekly or biweekly pricing that they're paying is all inclusive. It includes their weekly dues. It includes, utility payments, high-speed Wi-Fi, and also a fully furnished move-in ready place that has the mattress, that has the clothing storage, the things that they need. And also, we do provide telemedicine services to our residents as well at no additional cost. It's included as a part of their membership.
All of that is quite amazing as you worded, because I have a lot of clients. They come to me and say, Daniel, if it costs maybe $1,000 a month to stay in one of these rooms, and it costs $1,300 to rent a condo somewhere, why would anyone choose it? That explanation in such detail, to me, is just perfect. You just covered up. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to mention, we did a survey of all of our residents. We do an annual survey every year in December. And this past year, of those who responded, 44% said they chose PadSplit because of flexible lease terms, right? Where they have a 12-week commitment when they join and they're just paying week to week. There are no long-term commitments. Again, the ironic thing is typically average stay is 6 to 9 months, but sometimes people stay longer. But 34% chose PadSplit because of the affordability. And the average income is around $35,000 a year. So the typical kind of income range that we see is anywhere between, call it $20,000 to $60,000. But the average is right around 35. And 47% have their own vehicle. The remaining 53% rely on public transportation. So this is also where it's important to take into consideration how close is public transit to your property. And final thing I want to mention here is that of those that were surveyed and who responded, 95% said they would recommend PadSplit to a friend. Last year, that was 89%, and the year before that, it was 90%. So for 3 consecutive years, we've had an 89% plus recommendation rate from those who are actually using PadSplit and renting these rooms. And that's huge, because it's not only working for investors in terms of cash flow, but it's really working for those who actually are renting and need the place.
Correct. So it's benefiting everybody, which is the best case scenario for business. Now, before passing it all to C-Wing, I have a couple more questions. And this is something that for us as developers comes up a lot. And I would love your insights on that. So here's something that comes up quite often when I am dealing with clients, potential clients. The first question is regarding zoning and regulations. From their perspective, having a house with that many people living in one roof sounds like a potential issue. Keep in mind that a lot of them live in certain areas of the country where restrictions are very, very heavy. So this is all new to them. How would you explain to them how PadSplit works in terms of zoning and in terms of having several individuals living under one roof?
Sure. So I'm going to answer this question in 2 parts. Part number 1 is going to be about demographic data and why this is truly the future of residential real estate. And then part number 2 is going to be like the actual structure and proprietary strategy that we have that has allowed us to scale to where we are today. So part number 1, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, back in 1960, 44.2% of our population were married parents with kids. This was the single family segment. It was the overwhelming majority at that time in 1960. You fast forward to the latest US Census data, it is now at 17.9%. It is one of the smallest demographics in the United States. However, when you look at those who were living alone back in 1960, they only made up about 13.1% of our population. That number has more than doubled to 29% of our population as of 2023. Now, not only is it now already the largest demographic, those single residents, but there is a recent study by the Pew Research Center, which they do a lot of studies on population growth and demographic data and all that. And they confirmed that single individuals without kids is the fastest growing demographic in the United States. So not only is it already the largest, this is now actually going to continue to increase, and there are going to be more and more single residents searching for housing. And if I'm a single resident making somewhere between $20 to $45, $50,000 a year, renting a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family home at $2,400 per month probably financially is not the best solution for me.
Correct.
And that's where PadSplit really, caters to this rising demographic. So it's not really a trend like we saw with Airbnb. This is a systematic shift in the way people are living in the United States. And we have to shift the way we invest in real estate to accommodate this growing segment of the market. So that's part number one. And also, I will mention there's also now already been six states in the United States that have already introduced or passed legislation to support co-living. Most recently, we had Rhode Island with Housing Bill 8036. That basically is the ROOM Act, is what they've dubbed it. The ROOM is an acronym for Restoring Options and Occupancy Models. And this was introduced back in January, and it's kind of going through the process now. Pennsylvania was another most recent one with Housing Bill 2109. It's the Golden Girls Bill, is what they call it. That is a bipartisan bill that was introduced by both Republicans and Democrats in the House to basically legalize co-living and shared housing, right? And codified within the legislation. But we've already now had 5 other states that have already passed legislation. New Hampshire in 2025 with Housing Bill 457, Washington in 2024 with Housing Bill 1998, Colorado in 2024 with Housing Bill 24-1007, and Oregon in 2021 with Housing Bill 2583. And as a little bonus, the largest city in the United States, New York City, back in December of last year, introduced the Shared Housing Roadmap. This is a comprehensive roadmap that addresses building codes, zoning, legislation to support shared housing within New York City. The fact of the reality is that this movement is already growing. We see the growth in the demand data, but we also have a lot of growth from the legislative front. And unfortunately, with legislative changes, they take time and they don't happen overnight. In the meantime, as these changes are continuing to grow and advance across the United States, PadSplit has developed a proprietary legal strategy that basically operates under the definition of a family for all jurisdictions in the United States, right? And so our legal strategy is basically kind of a 2-part structure where there is a traditional host lease agreement where the owner, the host, is the landlord, and PadSplit LLC as the tenant. All 50 states recognize an LLC as an individual entity, so we kind of fall within that definition of an individual entity. In that host lease agreement, we do not commit to a specific monthly amount within the lease. Rather, where it says rent, we put member dues collected minus platform fees. So there's no guaranteed rent with PadSplit. Rather, it's what we collect. The residents, the reason we call them members and not tenants is because they have a members operating agreement. And so by meeting our standards and requirements, then these residents become a member of our member-based organization, and that's how we're able to establish association amongst all the residents. Everything we do operates within compliance of federal housing and urban development guidelines, and over the last 8 years, now across 32,000 units, there have been 0 properties being delisted from the platform by a city or state municipality. You got to think about what PadSplit is doing here. We're aligning incentives amongst all parties involved. Owners are incentivized by better rental revenue. Renters are incentivized by affordable, all-inclusive rental housing. Cities are incentivized by now creating more affordable housing stock in their inventory for their local area. And many major cities in which we operate in are facing tens of thousands of units in shortage for affordable rental housing. And PadSplit is that solution to creating the quickest and most efficient affordable housing solution here.
So that's really cool information, Emmanuel. Thank you for that. I'm just going to break it down real quick into layman terms and correct me if I'm wrong. If I am the host and you're PadSplit, my house let's say my house has 10 rooms that I could potentially rent. I am technically renting to you. You are my tenant, PadSplit LLC, and then the people that that stay at the house are members of your private organization, and that's how they can stay all under the same roof, perfectly legal without breaking any code. Is that correct?
That is correct. So a couple things I want to just point out here. Sometimes I get the question, is PadSplit a boarding house? No, it is not a boarding house because we do not serve meals. Well, then I get the question, well, is PadSplit a rooming house? No, because rooming houses have to be available to the public. We are technically not available to the public because we have a member-based organization that includes a $19 application fee, along with certain key requirements that are in compliance with fair housing, right? Background screening, eviction report, and income verification that they have to meet in order to become a member of our member-based organization.
Fantastic. I love it. That is really good information. Thank you. Siwing, you deal with a lot of high net worth investors, people that have very high paying jobs, they make good income, and they are always looking to invest so that, into their future. You deal with these guys a lot, and they are a bit of a different demographic. And what I'm trying to do here, which will help you, all of us really, is bridge that gap where your investors will understand how PadSplit works, how the kind of tenants that they have, and how the whole system works so that they feel comfortable with investing in it, because the investing part is actually the easy part. It's very, very high returns from owning a co-living home. It's the highest return real estate investment you can make. But the big hurdle right now is this, which we are discussing today, understanding a system that many people still are not familiar with. So please, Siwing, if you have some questions that relate to your clients for Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Thank you for inviting me. So again, my name is Siwing Yi. I'm the founder of a company named is Yi Real Estate Network. We've been doing this for more than 20 years. Most of our members, quote unquote, members of our network are, typical mom and pop real estate investors. Most of them from California. Like I said, they have full-time jobs. They're living in a high-tech world. Many of them engineers, and many of them are medical professionals, high-income professionals who does not want to create a second job to create a real estate portfolio. So they want a hands-off, turnkey cash flow properties, preferably new constructions in hot markets, growth markets, in the Sunbelt markets. So this is an easy transition for our investors, to be honest, because again, I have taken my investors from, again, mainly from California, to buy out of state, long distance, turnkey properties, single family homes, long-term rental, 1 to 4 unit, right? Typical residential investing, Fannie Mae lending guidelines, and what have you. And they put 20 to 25% down payment, they get cash flow. So long-term rental, it's very, very traditional. We all know that. So the only transition my investor needs to understand is that typically on a long-term rental, you get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, typically, right? Single-family home, 1,200 square foot, whatever, and a family unit pay an annual lease like $1,700 to $2,000, depending on the price point of the property. So the transition that our investors are making is using the new construction co-living model that Sukasa is promoting, Daniel, which is an amazing, easy transition. You go from 3-bedroom, 2-bath, renting to a long-term tenant, a family, into like a 7-bedroom to 7-bathroom to 7 tenants, 7 members through PadSplit. So, and then furthermore, so PadSplit would do all the upfront pre-screening, get the tenant and rent collection, which is great. It's a very hands-off investment. Then Sukasa comes in as a co-living property manager to do all the other kind of work, housekeeping and cleaning and whatever on the ground. So by having a system, process, and procedure in place, is easy for our investors to enter in this unique real estate asset class, the co-living investment model, using a new construction situation. But Emmanuel, let me ask you this: I'm just curious. I know this new construction model is not easy to create because very very hard to get the permit and get the land to build on a new construction neighborhood. But I have to believe the other co-living model that you run into with PadSplit, most of them are not new construction. Most of them are the investor, the owner, they converted from a traditional single family home, 3 bedroom, 2 bath into like 8 bedroom, 2 bath, which is fine. I mean, they're older renovated properties, but I'd rather love to have the new construction model because 1 bedroom, 1 bath is you collect premium rent, you get a better quality tenant, I guess, and they typically stay longer, right? I mean, everybody love a private bathroom, but compared to our competitor who have a 8 bedroom, 2 bath, co-living model, I mean, four people, four members sharing one bathroom on the other co-living model. I believe it's not as enticing as using our 1 bedroom, 1 bath ratio using Daniel's company, Sukasa, with the single family home, 7 bedroom, 7 bath, and a duplex, 14 bedroom, 14 private bathroom, through a 2 unit on a duplex, which is, and the revenue is like 4 or 5 times higher. The co-living monthly gross rent is 4, 5 to 6 times higher on a co-living model compared to a traditional long-term tenant situation, based on my calculation. So am I, Emmanuel? Am I right in my high-level assessment? I mean,
so you're absolutely right, Siwing. So when we were kind of first starting off 8 years ago, like PadSplit new construction wasn't even a thought. It was really about like kind of repurposing existing housing inventory that we have, and it still makes up a large majority, of the homes on PadSplit. And this is really where it can be a great benefit for owners who already have properties that maybe are underperforming, or short-term rental investors that have Airbnbs that are just, not meeting the numbers that they were expecting. That can be a great transition and pivot in their strategy to then convert it to a PadSplit. Now, what I will say, if you just keep it as a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, I can pretty much guarantee you that you will lose money with PadSplit. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat anything. 3 bedroom, 2 bathrooms, it just financially does not make sense. The moment you add that fourth room, maybe you convert an office, or you convert a living space, or some type of underutilized space in the home, 4 rooms is where things begin to make more sense for PadSplit versus traditional long-term rentals. But really, that sweet spot's going to be between 5 to 9 rooms, right? And keep in mind, as you mentioned, that for every 4 rooms, you must have 1 full-size shared bathroom. So, if you are an owner who's in that kind of position, it's good to work with a senior host advisor like myself, because we can kind of guide and walk you through the process of like how to convert them. We also have a vendor network that we built out over the last 8 years, and we have vendors in each of our core markets for the renovation. Now, they're not PadSplit employees, they're independent operating general contractors, but they're familiar with PadSplit. We also have property managers as well. So some of the things that PadSplit doesn't do, like maintenance, landscaping, cleans of the rooms when someone moves out, it's something we can kind of refer out to make sure you have someone in place for that. But the reason I really love the new construction model is because it's right now in this market one of the best use of capital in real estate. I mean, we know that the private bathroom rooms go for a higher rate. So I'm in Jacksonville, and for example, here in Jacksonville, like the room that has a shared bathroom is going for about $160, $170 per week, and then rooms that have a private ensuite bathroom are going for about $220 to $240, $250 per week, right?
Yep.
So the yield and the return is just incredible. But also, our data does show that this is what people are looking for. So in the last 30 days here at PadSplit, we've had 1,414,000 total searches for rooms for rent across the nation.
Wow, 1 million.
And out of those 1.4 million searches, the number one search filter that people used were rooms with the private bathroom at 109,000 searches with that filter. So what ShareCasa is doing is really kind of catering to what the market is looking for. We know this is what people value. Now, that's not to say that, the 7 bedroom, 2 bathroom conversion doesn't work, because there is about, a good segment of our population that uses PadSplit for the affordability, right? So maybe they can't afford the private ensuite bathroom, but I think when we look at, from an investor, if you have capital and you're looking to deploy now, the new construction route is the way to go.
Sounds great. Thank you guys for mentioning that. Said it better than I could. Absolutely. As your casa, we're trying to satisfy both the clients, the investors, and the members that was going to stay with us, because we believe that by offering the best housing possible, our occupancy is always going to be the highest possible, which in turn is going to make our investors very happy. It's a very circular system that is just very, very profitable for all parties involved. Now, something I wanted to ask you, Manuel, that's something that, again, comes up often with clients is, could you tell us about the tenants and their daily life itself? Like, is there any safety concerns? Are there any issues with people living under one roof getting along? Are evictions common? Are they difficult? Like, is this an issue at all, or is this something that the clients don't need to worry about?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that question up. And I'm going to kind of, revert back to the recommendation rate. Like, if this didn't work for residents, we wouldn't have a 95% recommendation rate. And also, I want to bring people back to the early 2010s when, Airbnb was kind of getting off the ground. A lot of the investors who stood on the sidelines at that time were like, well, do people really want a vacation to a stranger's home? And now the sentiment that I'm hearing from those that are sitting on the sidelines is, do strangers really want to live with other strangers in a stranger's home? And the overwhelming answer is yes. 95% of people said they would. And so I think, what we have to look here is it's just like, let's solely look at the data, let's look at the numbers. We maybe have a feeling from ourselves, from our own life experiences, but we have to put ourselves in the shoes of those who are making $35,000 a year with limited housing options and limited income. And this is really one of the best quality option that is out there. You're not going to find another new construction, private ensuite bathroom with furnishings included, Wi-Fi included, for the rate that you're able to rent it at with the share casa home. So, when it comes to evictions, basically, we have a 97% collection rate when it comes to our payment process. We've refined and streamlined this process over the last 8 years, and we've gotten kind of to fine-tune it down to a science. But the residents, again, they're paying weekly or bi-weekly. They will get billed. They'll get an invoice 2 days before. It's going to just go through their app, and they must pay this in full by their due date. If it's not paid in full, then there's an automatic $25 late fee that is applied. And even if it's just a partial payment, like it needs to be paid completely in full, otherwise the fee is applied. If their balance goes over $300, which is typically 2 weeks of non-payment, that's going to then automatically trigger a termination risk on their account. And they're going to have a 48-hour window to pay that balance below $300. If they fail to pay below $300, at that point, the host has two options, or the property manager. They can offer an extension. Let's say it is an extenuating life circumstance and they need some more time. That's going to be up to the host's discretion on how long that extension will be. Otherwise, they can terminate their membership for non-payment. If a membership is terminated, then a member must vacate within 24 hours. And if we get reports either from other residents or the property manager or host that person is still on site, then the host can reach out to PadSplit support and we can provide them with an eviction packet. Now, the good news, guys, is that PadSplit evictions are quite rare. So the national average for evictions in the United States is 7.8% right now. Our PadSplit eviction rate is 1.3%. We are a sixth of the national average.
Amazing.
That is amazing. I'm going to put that on the Instagram because that is an amazing figure that most people wouldn't expect. They would assume the opposite, and it is actually an amazing figure.
So if a person, if a member leaves for in good terms, or if they get evicted, so typically you have the housekeeping team come in, and typically, what's the maintenance cost to relist that room for a new member to come in, and how long typically PadSplit will do the marketing what's the time frame to get a new tenant in?
Get a new one in there. Yeah. So also I want to point out that if they do leave with the balance, let's say they get that $300 balance and they leave, that balance is always tied to their identity. They cannot come back to PadSplit and rent another room until it's been paid in full. So just keep that in mind. That's how, we also make sure that we have that good, strong collection.
So they can't game the system, basically.
Exactly. They cannot game the system because it's tied to their social security. We also have a lot of kind of fraud prevention systems running in the background, so they can't use like somebody else's ID or picture like that, anything like that. That just is not going to fly with PadSplit. And in terms of like the turn cost, right? So keep in mind, as a host, you can set a move-in fee, and by default, the move-in fee is going to be $100. It is a non-refundable one-time payment that a resident must pay in order to be able to move into a room. You control that as the host. It can be anywhere from $0 up to $999. And that move-in fee is really an upfront cost in order to be able to cover the cost of a room turn. For example, at my PadSplit, I do implement monthly cleanings of the shared space. Not something that we require with PadSplit. It's totally optional and up to the discretion of the owner. But for me, I'm thinking long-term, right? And long-term, I want to provide a good quality resident experience. Good quality resident experience, great revenue and profit for me as the owner. So my cleaner charges me about, I want to say like $70 or $75 for the cleaning of the shared space, which I build into my pricing strategy, right? So I make sure I have that built into my weekly pricing, so that way I'm covering the cost there. But then, when someone moves from a room, it's just an additional $25. So again, that's that $100 move-in fee is covered in that, and they'll clean the shared space as well. But, cleanings are important. Cleanliness is something that we want to think about. I know some hosts will set up like chore lists for the residents, and others will include that monthly cleaning and have it be a part of their, of their marketing strategy.
That's pretty awesome.
And also, one thing I meant to mention, if they are evicted, they are banned from PadSplit. They can never come back again.
Okay, that's great. So that doesn't become, again, you cannot game the system. You cannot keep coming back and causing trouble. This is great. Our clients would love that. Now, something that's funny, Emmanuel, that we were talking about earlier, and I wanted to touch on, is one of the uphill battles that we have, besides people not understanding the system, is that they rely a lot on the wisdom of ChatGPT. They come to me and ask me how it works, and then they go on ChatGPT and ask it the same question. ChatGPT does not really know how it works, and it gives them the wrong idea of what co-living is, or what PadSplit is. It might even tell them they should not build anywhere but certain zip codes, and it will give them a zip code that's basically way out of anyone's price range. So how do you usually tackle that hurdle, so to speak?
Would you let ChatGPT raise your child?
I would not.
Probably not.
No,
Would you trust
absolutely.
ChatGPT with your money? Probably not, right? And so we have to think about here is like obviously do your due diligence, but the greatest due diligence you can do is maybe speaking with other hosts, right? And maybe connecting with those who are actually doing it. And there are Facebook communities out there. One word of caution with the Facebook communities, that's where you're going to see the biggest challenges, right? Because people generally kind of go to invent and try to find solutions. So you're going to see problems there. But the overwhelming majority of people, join PadSplit because of the opportunity that it creates, and they continue to grow their portfolio because of the returns that it's offering. So, when it comes to that question, I really would encourage those to connect with those who are actually hosts. Hear from the source. Don't just, talk to me, or don't just talk to Daniel, but, talk to others. And if you want, we can definitely connect you with those who are doing it, and you can hear their true, honest perspective on it.
Awesome. That's great. Siwin, is there any other question that you might have for Emmanuel regarding PadSplit?
Yeah, I do have a question. Now, I believe what's that word? The proof of concept. Again, PadSplit have done a lot of surveys, a lot of research, and you even have a algorithm where you can a potential investor host can look into PadSplit and determine what market is best for co-living performance. And of course, Florida and Texas is my personal top two, which is great. But some concern some investors have is that the PadSplit co-living property in physical location, ideally going to be like a C to C plus neighborhood. Now, when they do a Google Map search of a C or C plus class neighborhood. They may have some concerns, but the neighborhood may not be that great. It's high crime, whatever. So, but then again, if a co-living property is located in an A-class neighborhood, that's not going to work either, right?
No.
Because you're not going to find a tenant. You're not going to find a workforce tenant that can occupy your property in the A class or even a B class neighborhood. But then again, you don't want to have a co-living property located in a rough neighborhood like a D class, rough neighborhood either. So the sweet spot. I mean, I don't know how you categorize. I categorize it, C, whatever, B class, C class. So Daniel, so from the PadSplit perspective, how do you address the type of neighborhood ideally for optimum PadSplit operating performance for long-term real estate investors?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think the easiest way there's two ways to do it. Number one, go onto padsplit.com and create a host account. And when you create a host account, you're going to be able to access to our data. There's a feature where when you get signed in, you click the resources, and then there's a map that you can access. And this will show you live, real-time performance of every PadSplit market across the United States that we're active in. Jacksonville, for example, where I'm located right now, I'm looking at the map. We have 2,135 active units. In the last 30 days, we've had over 12,338 searches. And then I can see that rooms to the shared bathroom go for 167 per week, and rooms to the private bathroom 251 per week, 85% occupancy rate, 9 days to first booking, and 38 days to 80% occupancy. Now, the beautiful thing is you can actually drill down on that data and go down to the zip code, so you can see how different zip codes are performing. And this is really helpful because it gives you real-time insights on various locations within a particular market, and you can see the occupancy rate, you can see the pricing and the fill rate as well. So that's usually going to be my go-to to help answer that question. And also we have to think about who are we serving, right? We know that the average income is $35,000 a year. So what I could do is then I can maybe then go look at a median income map of all the zip codes. And I'm looking for zip codes that are somewhere between $20,000 to $60,000 a year to kind of fit within that average. And then that's kind of like the client that, PadSplit is likely going to be servicing, right? To your point, a Class A neighborhood for PadSplit it just doesn't make sense. It's trying to put a square peg in a circle hole. It doesn't work. Affordability is not a problem there. And honestly, you're more likely to run into issues with neighbors and complaints and stuff like that. You just don't want to even get involved in. So, I think one thing we have to think about as investors, is the ability to actually be able to access the shared space of that property. There's a huge component of risk mitigation that provides, because with the traditional long-term rental, you can't just walk right into the shared space without providing, adequate notice as what's required by the jurisdiction. What I love about PadSplit is that actually my maintenance and capital expenditures are lower than that of my long-term rentals. And the reason for that is because when I get a long-term tenant, and I'm getting my monthly check, but God knows what's waiting for me when they move out and all the expenses that come with that. We've all heard the stories and the experiences where the place is trash. We could all relate. That doesn't happen at my PadSplit. And there's several different reasons why. One, I get a monthly cleaner in there. Not only is the monthly cleaning helping people stay there longer and, provide a better resident experience, but it's getting an extra set of eyes on the property. Another thing to think about is that the residents, they all have their own individual agreement for that room, and they're all paying their own hard-earned money to have access to their room. So if someone is in there causing a ruckus or a problem, you're going to find out about it really quickly, because they're going to either report it to PadSplit or report it to the owner and the property manager. So you're able to kind of nip those issues a lot sooner, versus with a long-term rental, again, you have no idea what's going on in there. With PadSplit, you can install cameras in the shared space if you wanted to. Just make sure it's disclosed in your listing that you have cameras in the shared space. It can be like the kitchen or something like that. And obviously also on the exterior as well, so you can kind of keep track of who's coming in and out. But I think we have to just really consider the potential benefits and risk mitigation that PadSplit provides with the access and the individual agreements for every resident.
Awesome. And if I could just elaborate on that, thank you, Emmanuel, because we as ShareCasa, we are the developers. So on top of everything that PadSplit does to ensure proper operational safety and everything involved, we ourselves, we're the ones building the houses right now. So we are very strategic in where we choose to build. We obviously want to take care of our clients. We want to take care of the members that stay at their houses. So we're always going to choose neighborhoods that we think are good for this. They're neighborhoods that might be currently in development, but they're on the rise. And these are also, like Emmanuel says, these are the areas that require affordable, accessible housing. We're not going to go build a co-living house in Beverly Hills because people that live in Beverly Hills do not need this type of housing. Hence, no one's going to rent your home, and it doesn't make any sense. So when you say a C type, C plus type of neighborhood, that's almost a sweet spot because you get individuals that have a job, that want to build their life, but also have a strong need for affordable housing. So again, we're always trying to benefit everybody, and that's the goal here. But yeah, that was a very good question, Steven. Thank you, Emmanuel, for helping me answer that. And we are just out of time, so I wanted to just wrap it up now, saying that co-living is not just a trend. You know, this is a response to a need. This is shifting in the way people live. It is a market with a great future, as Emmanuel just elaborated. And more than anything, I think it's turning a problem into a solution. Our investors have the problem of having nowhere to put their money in that has high profits, as Steven just proved with legacy rentals, and so many people need affordable housing. Via co-living and PadSplit, we can actually bridge those worlds and get everybody what they need, which is a dream scenario, honestly.
Sounds good.
Sounds
It's an
great.
emerging co-living is an emerging, skyrocketing new real estate asset class, better than Airbnb short-term rental, better than mid-term rental, better than traditional long-term rental, better than any other real estate asset class. So do you agree, Emmanuel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, maybe my opinion is a little bit biased, being an employee and an investor and a host myself as well. But look, the numbers speak volumes, and the maths. And
Yeah.
you know, at the
Absolutely.
end of the day, if the profit, you know, I always love to tell people, it's like you cannot have a mission without margin, right? And we have to have that profitability for it to be sustainable and to align incentives and to make it worth the time and investment. So I think this is the future of housing, and I firmly believe that we're going to continue to grow. We're averaging, you know, anywhere between a 3 to 6% month-over-month growth rate, and you know, we're always investing heavily in continuing to expand and grow that as well.
Sounds
Fantastic.
great. Very exciting. Thank you for presenting.
Yes.
You addressed a lot of issues, Emmanuel, on behalf of PadSplit, and of course, Daniel, on behalf of your turnkey new construction model as a builder developer. Hey, we all combine our resources and make it a turnkey situation for our investors, our hosts, to do well financially for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining me
Thank
today,
you.
and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.